It's 10 o'clock. This is Sky News at 10, our top story. The Prime Minister pledges to take the brakes off Britain in a King's speech that puts the economy and stability at the heart of the new government's agenda.
This government has been elected to deliver nothing less than national renewal.
But as the government prepares to use its massive majority to drive through change on housing, transport and employment rights, it faces down a backbench rebellion on the welfare cap.
I'm live here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, as the Republican convention prepares to hear from Donald Trump's chosen running mate. J.D. Vance, the man who could be the next vice president of the United States, will take to the stage tonight, even as his selection heightens anxieties about a Trump return to the White House. And we hear from voters in this key swing state as the Republicans attempt to use this convention to shape public opinion.
Also tonight, a desperate appeal for information as two British men go missing in Sweden amid fears they were victims of a double murder. And Chelsea star Enzo Fernandez sparks a racism row after apologising for a video containing singing about the heritage of French players. Plus, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages. That's in our press preview from 10:30 right through to midnight. Hello there, good evening. The new government today put national renewal as its central objective in the first King's speech since their landslide election victory. King Charles announced 40 pieces of legislation covering almost every area of public policy, but with the government saying they would put the drive to deliver economic growth at its core. The former Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, accused Labour of painting an overly bleak picture of the economy, even as inflation figures released today dampened down expectations of an imminent interest rate cut. Well, today's speech included legislation to streamline the planning process in order to build more homes, a ban on zero-hours contracts and plans to create a national wealth fund. On public services, the government has announced plans to bring the rail industry into public ownership, Great British Rail, and an investment of £8.3 billion into a publicly owned green power company, Great British Energy. The King's speech also laid out new legislation which will make water bosses criminally liable for water pollution. On health and education, the government will scrap the VAT exemption for private schools. It will also bring into law the plans of the former Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, for a rolling ban on smoking, as well as ban conversion therapy. The King's speech also pledged to rebuild neighbourhood policing and bolster the number of community police officers. The government also plans a law making drink spiking a specific offence, and the establishment of a border security command to tackle illegal channel crossings. Our political editor, Beth Rigby, has our first report.
This a big day for the Queen, her 77th birthday, for the monarch, only his second King's speech to Parliament.
Morning, Prime Minister.
And for this man, the first time in 15 years that Labour's laid out a programme for government. July's general election opening the doors to a Labour administration. These two leaders, having swapped roles, now exchanging pleasantries. The new Prime Minister into the House of Lords to watch the monarch set out what lies ahead under Labour.
My government's legislative programme will be mission-led and based upon the principles of security, fairness and opportunity for all.
40 separate bills, one core priority.
Securing economic growth will be a fundamental mission.
To that end, a new planning bill to push through developments.
My ministers will get Britain building, including through planning reform.
Plans for new powers to metro mayors and local government, and promises of better rail and bus services.
My ministers will bring forward legislation to improve the railways by reforming rail franchising, establishing Great British Railways and bringing train operators into public ownership.
While also introducing employment laws to make working life better too.
My government will legislate to introduce a new deal for working people and enhance employment rights,
From the Lords back to the Commons, Keir Starmer making good on his pledge to govern for all, even the ex-PM and his deputy treated as friends, not foes, for now. But politics still at play in this place, the former Prime Minister keen for credit on the economy.
I understand well that the Chancellor is keen to paint as bleak a picture as possible, but I would just gently point out that this is not exactly what the facts say. The party opposite has inherited an economy that is already on an upward trajectory.
The new Prime Minister promising to put his change message into action.
Mr. Speaker, this government has been elected to deliver nothing less than national renewal, to stop the chaos of the past 14 years, turn the page on an era of politics as noisy performance, and return it to public service.
Pledging to deal with problems head on, but the PM already under pressure from his MPs to scrap the two-child benefit cap, ducking that decision for now.
No child should be growing up in poverty, and we will work across the House on that issue.
Keir Starmer looked like he was relishing every single moment of today, and so he should. He is one of the most powerful post-war prime ministers this country has ever seen, with a huge majority, a huge programme for government, and a huge opportunity to change this country in a way not seen since the likes of Tony Blair or Margaret Thatcher. But that scale of opportunity is matched by the scale of the task to win back voters' trust in government and to really deliver on the changes he's promised. A PM who wants a decade of national renewal, but his success depends on delivering economic growth, which, as many Prime Minister past will know, is far easier said than done. Beth Rigby, Sky News, Westminster.
And Beth joins me now from Downing Street. You could argue, Beth, the Prime Minister is never more powerful than today. Did he make it count?
Well, Anna, the first thing to say is it is a massive programme for government. Since 2010, the average King or Queen speech has had about 20 bills in it, while Keir Starmer has doubled that with 40 pieces of legislation. And to compare it, say, to Blair, let's think about what the hallmarks were of his first Queen's speech back in 1997. You had the introduction of the national minimum wage, the reduction of class sizes to under 30 and devolution to Scotland and Wales. They are things, if you like, that are seared on our national consciousness as New Labour, and these big changes under a Blair government. What of Starmer? Is this the moment too where we will see these sort of developments that will change our country in the long term? What are the big symbols in this speech? I think there was so much in it in terms of a devolution bill, a workers' rights bill, a planning bill. But then the question is, does the Workers' Right Bill really transform workers' lives so that they get more flexible working, that they feel more secure and better serviced in their jobs? Does the planning bill really unlock housing in the way that Keir Starmer has promised? Does devolution really improve local communities? Will people see benefits in their high streets? Will Great British Energy really unleash a green power revolution and transform our energy networks, but also bring down our bills? They're the questions. I think the point of it all is the public are running out of patience. They want delivery, and the Labour government are saying to me they understand that and they will have progress checks on how they are doing. But you've got to ask yourself, at the apex of his power, is this as good as it gets for Keir Starmer? The only thing I'd say about that is everyone underestimated him when he became Labour leader. They thought they couldn't win. He couldn't win from where he started out after that election loss in 2019. He proved the doubters wrong. And number 10 tonight, hoping that when it comes to the programme for government, he's perhaps underestimated again.
Beth, live there in Downing Street. Thank you. Well, the government may have pledged to take the brakes off to help Britain grow, but there are warnings that some of their plans to intervene more directly in the economy might have the opposite effect. So can growth and fairness go hand in hand? Throughout the election, we reported from our target town of Grimsby. Now it's done. Sky's business correspondent, Adele Robinson, has returned to find out what people there make of the government's new agenda.
Building up the economy, fixing a housing crisis.
Thank you so much.
Where the new government prioritises spending, impacts lives.
It's so expensive.
Holly still lives at her mum's with her daughter, saving with her fiancé to buy.
Rents, I've looked between about 750 and to 1,000 plus. Yeah.
And that's completely unaffordable for you.
Yeah, completely unaffordable. My partner probably will be able to rent in probably about a year and a half, because that's probably when the car's going to be paid off. But then it's like finding somewhere that's affordable.
She welcomes the government pledge to get Britain building, so does Ellie.
Life happened and we had to spend money that we'd saved.
Unable to get a mortgage yet.
We're comfortable, but we can't do anything extra than just the everyday essentials and stuff. But our rent at the moment is £900 for a 3-bed terrace.
Grimsby's not immune to the national shortage of housing. This estate took 6 years. Developers welcoming reform of planning laws.
Reforming planning law is actually just one part of it.
It is only one part of it, because it's all well and good getting consent for an extra 1.5 million houses or whatever you need. You've got to actually deliver them. So to do that, you've then got to go on and get them built. And that requires a construction industry to do that. And then you have to have the depth of tradesmen and the depth of up-and-coming tradesmen.
Do you not think we have it at the moment?
No, I think we've got a shortage of skilled tradespeople in the industry.
All of it part of a plan to get the economy going.
This government doesn't want to borrow more, and it doesn't want to cut spending either. And therefore, the only way to deliver on public services and improving standards of living is through economic growth.
But it's a balance, as with everything, including on increasing workers' rights.
I have to accept that in order for my business to succeed, like all businesses, big and small, your employees have to be well looked after. So really, I'm not against it. So,
but the knock-on impact is costs.
Yes, it might be inflationary.
Promises made with growth key, but it may be a long time before they deliver. Adele Robinson, Sky News.
Tucked away in the small print of today's speech was a measure that the government hopes will tackle a huge problem in Britain: why so many school children are missing from class. The creation of a register of children missing education is seen by many as a positive move. Our People and Politics correspondent, Nick Martin, has spent more than a year investigating this issue and reports now on why more still needs to be done.
George hasn't been to school for the last 2 years. He's autistic, which means he has special educational needs. But at 11 years old, he cannot read or write. His mum, Rachel, has had 15 rejection letters from schools who've refused to give her son a place.
If you apply to a different type of school, they'll find a different reason. So they'll say they can't cope with his social needs, and the next one can't cope with his speech and language needs. So I think because he's got a range of needs, each school is picking bits out, and we can't cope with this and we can't cope with that. But a lot of them are aware of how difficult it is going to be to get George into school now.
George is one of thousands of children missing out on their education. The scale of this problem is huge. In the autumn term last year, 20% of all pupils were persistently absent, missing around 1 day of school every fortnight. That's up 53% since the pandemic. And there were more than 117,000 children missing from education altogether in 2022-23. That's up by nearly a quarter since the previous year. Campaigners have fought for a long time for a national register of children missing education. And tucked away in the unspoken small print of the King's speech, the new Labour government announced the creation of such a register. But the King's speech contained very little specific detail about how the government intends to tackle this crisis. So what more will the government do to try and help children like George and all the other children who everyone knows where they are? They're just not getting into school.
So I think we need to take action in both areas. We don't have oversight of where all of our children are, and that needs to change, and there has been widespread consensus about that, and we are acting where the previous government failed to do so.
It's good to see that the education is clearly towards the top of Labour's in tray, and that's really encouraging, but it's going to need a real comprehensive response that builds upon what we've heard and seen today, and that delivers for children week after week after week.
Because the government's planned register for missing children is part of a much bigger problem.
It's a small step, but George isn't missing from education. Everybody knows where George is. We can't get him an education, so there's more to be done.
George is due to start at a special school in September, but it's far from ideal. Miles away from his home, it'll mean a 4-hour round trip on his own each day. Nick Martin, Sky News, Essex.
Hello and welcome to the Republican National Convention live here in Milwaukee, and it's day 3 of the RNC, and you can just see behind me the rehearsals continuing as we wait for this event to begin in about 45 minutes time. And the headline act is of course J.D. Vance, Donald Trump's vice presidential nominee, which was announced on Monday, and we are expecting him to introduce himself not only to the convention but to America. He has sold himself as a working class boy who's worked through the ranks, went to Silicon Valley, and then, of course, a life in politics, a rising star of the Republican Party, and now potentially could be, in the next 3 or 4 months, the Vice President of the United States. Well, to discuss all of this and his views, let's bring in our Mark Stone, who's here with me. And Mark, I mean, so much to learn still about who J.D. Vance is, but he is the new generation, half the age of Donald Trump.
39 years old, only found out he was going to be the vice presidential candidate on Monday. Already the T-shirts have been printed, the merch, as they call it. Trump Vance is all over this city. And I think tonight we will get to see who this guy is. Many in America don't know much about him, only a senator for just over a year. A man whose journey is fascinating. His life story defines him. From poverty, originally from Kentucky, moved to Ohio, wrote a book that was a bestseller. It is a story that defines him, and I think he is a person who Donald Trump believes can pull in voters who may not like Trump. Voters who don't appeal, who a millionaire from Manhattan doesn't appeal to them. So a very different character, and I think it will be fascinating to hear what he has to say tonight. You know, this is Americana in full throttle. We can hear the sound check getting ready for what we will see tonight. Donald Trump will be here, of course, listening to the man he's chosen. What strikes me, Yalda, is where we are right now, in a place where, if you are sitting in the White House, if you're President Biden, he thought right now he would be in a place where inflation was down, Trump convictions were stacking up, where the border was more secure, where maybe the Gaza war was over, where maybe the Ukraine war was coming to an end. None of that is happening. Inflation, yeah, that's coming down, but no one's looking at that because everyone is focused on Joe Biden's age. And I think, you know, the age, the extraordinary weekend we've had with an attempted assassination against Donald Trump, all the focus is here. In this arena right now, it really feels like they've won already. Clearly they haven't. They've got a long way to go, but it feels like they have won. Everything, the most MAGA view is usually summed up by Marjorie Taylor Greene. Don't know how familiar people are with her, but she is about as MAGA as you can get, and we caught up with her a little earlier.
Oh, J.D. Vance, I love him. I was the first member of Congress to endorse him.
Are you disappointed you're not vice president?
Very excited about J.D. Vance.
Have you spoken to Trump since the assassination attempt?
I sat in the box with him last night.
And how was it?
Great.
And how was he?
Great. He's doing wonderful.
Mark, thank you so much. As we say, one of the most MAGA views there. Well, of course, we have been getting the view inside the convention center, but what do voters think outside? And certainly here, Wisconsin is a swing state, and it could go any which way in November. Well, my colleague James Matthews has been out and about, getting a sense of how people are going to vote and what they think. Have a look.
we came to a place called WOW. It's the acronym for the counties of Washington, Ozaukee and Waukesha. The corner of Wisconsin that gave us the Les Paul Gibson guitar picked Trump at the last election. But Biden won the state overall by just 20,000 votes.
How are you going to vote in November?
Trump.
Why?
Because he makes the right decisions.
Do we have any reason to vote for Trump? I mean, he's a convicted felon.
I don't love either of them, if I'm being honest.
Rob Stewart has owned his family farm in Waukesha for 50 years.
Come on, guys.
In Wisconsin, rural areas lean Republican. In the must-win state, support for Trump is strongest here.
Well, the inflation, I mean, that hits everybody. That's probably number one. You can spend $300,000 or $400,000 on a tractor and $1 million on a new combine. And to justify that, you'd need 10,000 acres of crop.
The private jets are parked at Waukesha Airport while the Republican National Convention continues half an hour down Highway 43. Trump is shaping up for victory in swing states where the election will be decided. Opinion polls had him ahead before the assassination attempt.
I think it humanizes him. He got up. It showed how strong he was. He kept fighting.
A good man versus a not so good man. And I'll let
Which is which?
I'm going to vote for Biden.
One of the key questions in this swing state and in others is how many swing voters can be left? How many can be undecided between two candidates, both of whom have been in office and presented clear cases for comparison and contrast? They're preparing the annual fair in Waukesha and testing the swing. What else?
I know where my moral compass is located, and there's one candidate that clearly aims one direction and one aims the other direction.
So which do you favor?
Biden.
There have been spectacular storms in the skies of these suburbs, not just in their politics. Come November, the election here could be decided less by a swing vote than by getting the vote out. The political wow factor in this place called WOW. James Matthews, Sky News, in Waukesha, Wisconsin.
Well, let's bring in James, who joins us from just outside this convention centre. And James, it's filling up in here, and I know you're speaking to a lot of people outside as well. But I mean, when we look at your piece, you really do get a sense that this is such a crucial state now in the lead up to November, what they call a purple state, not Democratic, not Republican.
Yeah, absolutely, a must-win state. If Joe Biden doesn't win in Wisconsin, then he has a very narrow path indeed back to the White House. He only won it by 20,000 last time round. Opinions are divided, as you heard in my report, and the point made to me by a number of people was, how many swing voters can there be, given that both these individuals, Trump and Biden, have been road tested. People know what they are about. They have seen them in the Oval Office and seen how they have touched their lives. So decisions largely must have been made. But in terms of this conference, and as I stand outside as people go in for the Make America Strong Once Again session, their tails are up here in the Republican Party. Traditionally, speaking to the media, there is a defensiveness about Republicans. Not right now. There is an effusive about delegates and people gathering. They can be bothered to talk to you about politics, about their party, about their political leader. There's an effusive air of a party on the front foot because that's where they think they are. If they could have written the script for this week, Yalda, a united conference with division amongst their Democrat opponents, that's what Republicans would have done. They're quite happy here that that is the state of things right now.
Indeed, very much so. James, thank you so much. And as James was saying there, I mean, there's a real energy in this room, the sense that they are moving towards November and it is going to be a win for them and for Donald Trump as president. There is a sense of defiance and unity that's filling up in this room, and we will hear more today in about an hour's time when the procession gets underway, and we will hear from J.D. Vance, vice presidential candidate of Donald Trump. But for now, back to you, Anna, in London.
Yalda, thank you. The families of 2 British men missing in Sweden are appealing for information on their whereabouts amid fears they were victims of a double murder. It comes after 2 bodies were found in a burning car in an industrial area of Malmö on Sunday evening. Here's our Europe correspondent, Adam Parsons.
Juan Cifuentes and Farouk Abdul Razak went missing over the weekend. Friends from North London, they travelled to Denmark for a business meeting and haven't returned. The pair landed at Copenhagen's busy airport and apparently rented a Toyota RAV4 car. It's then believed they drove over this, the Øresund Bridge, which connects Denmark with the Swedish city of Malmö. But later, on that Sunday afternoon, the Malmö police were called to a grim crime scene, a RAV4 car that had been burnt out with 2 bodies found inside. The police immediately treating it as murder.
To be clear, it's routine to classify this type of scenario as murder in order to maintain our pace and carry out our duties appropriately. It's very unusual to find 2 people in a car like this. We will work hard to investigate and clarify what has happened to these individuals.
Malmö is a city with a high crime rate and serious problems with gang violence. There are growing fears that the victims could be the 2 missing British men. The Foreign Office said it was supporting the families of Juan and Farouk. Their wait for news goes on. Adam Parsons, Sky News.
An inquiry into the treatment of people in police custody in Greater Manchester is due to be published tomorrow. It was launched following a Sky News investigation into how women were being inappropriately strip-searched by officers. But the Baird inquiry has been expanded to also examine the experiences of some men. One of them has told us that he believes he was unlawfully arrested several times and subjected to humiliating strip searches. Jason Farrell has more.
Right, last chance to open the door.
When do police have the right to smash your door in, arrest you or strip search you? Do they ever abuse their authority? The man being dragged away here thinks they do. Mark Dove, who captured the footage on his doorbell camera, is now part of an inquiry which was launched following a Sky News investigation into the custody practices of Greater Manchester Police. His story begins 18 months before his door was smashed in, when he was arrested following a family dispute.
What are we arrested for?
At the moment, for threats to cause criminal damage.
He says the others were being more aggressive towards him, and he was treated differently because he's black. When he got to the police station, he tried to complain.
How do you put a complaint in?
I don't know.
He didn't arrest someone that threatened to kill me because they're white.
Mark then refused to answer any questions.
I get took to a cell, I get strip searched.
Initially, he was put into anti-rip garments, but then says police told him he'd ripped them, so they took them off him.
They take everything out the cell. Absolutely everything out the cell and just leave me there naked for 8 hours. It was freezing the cell. I was asking them for blankets. They wouldn't give me any. So I had to use the tap, which runs hot water, to basically just keep myself warm.
Last year, a Sky News investigation into the strip searching of 3 women led to the inquiry by the former Victims Commissioner Dame Vera Baird. Initially just looking at the treatment of women in police custody, it broadened when people like Mark came forward. He was arrested and strip-searched a second time over similar allegations. He refused to get into anti-rip clothes and protested over lack of food and medication. A female police officer came to his cell and led him through the custody suite naked.
I was humiliated. There was even prisoners sat on the benches while I'm stark, absolutely naked, not a sock on, nothing.
Greater Manchester Police told us they have been fully engaged with Dame Vera's inquiry and know there are examples in it which reflect poor standards and practices and will respond on publication. An internal investigation into Mark's allegations is ongoing.
You don't have to tell me what you're here for.
Why would we tell you now? We're not going to tell you if you won't come down and speak to us.
Because I don't want to speak to you at time of the morning.
Right, okay.
This 5:40 a.m. visit to Mark's house was the result of an allegation, again from a relative, who said he'd sent a malicious text. The Baird inquiry will examine whether they acted lawfully in smashing his door in and arresting him in front of his partner and daughter. And why on 3 occasions he was also stripped naked, but each time released without charge.
What's he done? Mum, I'm not going to. None of my business. Oh my God.
And is there a wider pattern of police acting outside of their powers? Jason Farrell, Sky News.
Chelsea's Enzo Fernandez has apologised to his teammates after filming himself and some members of the Argentina squad singing a derogatory chant about the heritage of French players. Chelsea has started an internal disciplinary procedure which could see the player fined, but one of his own teammates has called the video uninhibited racism. Sky's Molly Malone reports.
He is one of football's most expensive signings. Chelsea bought midfielder Enzo Fernandez last year after his national team Argentina won the World Cup. But it's his actions off the pitch now proving costly. The Argentinian side won against Colombia in the Copa America final on Sunday night. And after that victory came this. Live stream by Fernandez to millions of followers on Instagram. Celebrations on the team bus, but some can be heard chanting racist lyrics about French players and those with connections to African and Asian nations. It was immediately condemned, including by Chelsea teammate Wesley Fofana, who tweeted to say, "Football in 2024, uninhibited racism." Fernandez later apologised on his Instagram account. The song includes highly offensive language and there is absolutely no excuse for these words, he said. He went on to say, "That video, that moment, those words do not reflect my beliefs or my character. I am truly sorry." Chelsea have launched an internal investigation, saying they've acknowledged their player's apology and that they'll use it as an opportunity to educate. But this isn't the first incident of its kind, raising questions for football and its governing bodies. Troy Townsend is a former player who now campaigns against racism in football. Awarded by the FA for his work, he says change is needed and now.
There seems to be a call to action without any action after it. So I would like to see some change. I would like to see that players are responsible and aware of the impact of language used, whether it's on their social platforms, whether it's on the pitch, wherever it may be. They have a responsibility because they influence a generation. And the game's going to benefit and society will benefit as well.
Argentina beat France in a penalty shootout in the 2022 World Cup final, and racist chants were heard from fans then, prompting calls for action. This time it's the players, but the story is a similar one. Responding to Fernandez's video, the French Football Federation say they filed a legal complaint, while FIFA say it's being looked into. This a familiar problem for football. How its governors respond, now the focus. Molly Malone, Sky News.
Well, that was Sky News at 10. Coming up, we'll take a first look at tomorrow's newspapers in the press preview tonight, joined by the Daily Mirror's associate editor, Kev Maguire, and the Daily Mail's Whitehall editor, Claire Ellicott. Welcome to both of you. Among these stories, we'll be discussing this front page of the Telegraph about the King's speech, obviously. Its headline, Starmer unveils his big state, Britain. That and plenty more when we come back.